Hello guys, welcome back to our Anime Explainer. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Swallowed Star based on novel. So let's start. The large snail turned back, and naturally, all that was left in the sight of the group was that magnificent shell. Long Houchen's both hands were raised, stopping his mates from approaching the snail. The forest boa king's treasure ended up to be a snail. That was truly quite unexpected, especially when its attribute wasn't light. In some sense, he belonged to the life attribute type, mixed with some other heterogeneous attributes. And because of living in these swamps, its body also carried poison attribute. The snail before their eyes was however of light attribute. From its nervous looks, it couldn't be a good friend of that forest boa king, much less a lover. Then, there was only one possibility. It was an enemy of the forest boa king, or rather an object of desire in his eyes. But this snail had been living well for so long. Killing the forest boa king had taken Andromalius several months, which also proved that this large snail was a magical beast of the 9th step that had no issue surviving here for several months. From this, its level of threat goes without saying. For this reason, even if this snail was of the same light element as Long Houchen, there was no way he could let the others take the risk to approach it. 11th Holy Guard. Do you recognize this magical beast? Long Houchen turned the blue flames in the eyes of the 11th Holy Guard, who just joined Long Houchen's side, starting to pulse as he pondered. Something seemed to have come to his mind, but he didn't seem so certain. Don't worry, it's okay even if it's just a guess. Long Houchen tried to encourage him. In these lands of death, they had been encountering extinct forest boars and other antique magical beasts, such as sorskates. This large snail was very possibly another kind of magical beast from ancient times, but no one had any information about it, and thus didn't dare rashly approach it. The 11th Holy Guard nodded lightly, giving the reply, from its aura, that's certainly a kind of ancient magical beast. It should be a starlight divine beast, but I don't know much about them. 9th may know a bit about it. Hearing his respectful tone towards the 9th Holy Guard, Long Houchen seemed moved. 11th, why is it that although you are fellow Holy Guards, the three of you so respectful towards 9th? It's as if you didn't have the same status. The 11th Holy Guard was startled, but still gave a reply to Long Houchen's interrogation. Our status is not the same. Master only had 9 Holy Guards following him for a long time, all of whom were elites from their generation, defeated in combat by Master. The 10th, 12th, and I are servants accepted by him. Compared to the 9th Holy Guard, we differ a lot, be it in strength or knowledge. Long Houchen had a flash of understanding, so things were actually like that. The 9th Holy Guard was indeed a lot stronger than the other 3 Holy Guards. At the same time, he started to become even more expectant regarding the Tower of Eternity. With the help they had from these 4 great Holy Guards, the strength of their team as a whole almost doubled. If it is possible for him to get the addition of the whole 12 Holy Guards, what kind of sight will that be? At that time, he will be bound to have reached the 9th step. If it is the same for the Holy Guards, then even average demon gods would be no issue for them. However, Long Houchen also thought back about Yi Xiaolei's words to him. That no matter what, he couldn't enter the last floor of the Tower of Eternity. Otherwise, he would get controlled by the evil degenerations of the slumbering calamity Elux. Please bring 9th Holy Guard here, so that we can see whether he knows this magical beast. Now was clearly not the time to ponder about the Tower of Eternity. Long Houchen had instead immediately called the 9th Holy Guard here, to have a look at whether he had an idea of what kind of magical beast that snail could be. Overall, the cave wasn't very deep. A little while later, the 9th Holy Guard arrived with loud steps at Long Houchen's side. But he suddenly became stiff upon seeing that large snail, and even the soul of powerhouse pulsing in his eyes seemed to have frozen. Long Houchen didn't interrupt him. Strength aside, it seemed that the other 3 Holy Guards preserved only their feelings and knowledge, with some of their battle instincts and memories. But the 9th Holy Guard seemed to have a real soul of his own. For instance, when seeing Kia, the respect in his behavior seemed even more apparent than for Long Houchen. After quite a while, the 9th Holy Guard seemed to be coming back to his normal state, murmuring, "This is a starlight divine beast, from the peaceful era." A divine snail of sun and moon. Hearing about his familiarity towards this kind of magical beast, Long Houchen's spirits rose. What kind of magical beast is a divine snail of sun and moon? The ninth holy god replied, even during the ancient times, their rarity exceeded even that of dragons. To speak about the divine snails of sun and moon, I have to mention the starlight magical beasts first. They are a kind of extremely powerful magical beasts from these times, all of whom are of light attribute. Any types of magical beast may give birth to a starlight divine beast. And each one of them are existences at the 10th rank. They are standing as representative for light, and their worth is really enormous. Every time a starlight magical beast appears, various races will be bound to attack it from all sides, like when humans run across a divine tool. There is no race that doesn't harbor a desire for them. Consequently, the starlight magical beasts are unable to reproduce, and their numbers kept lessening with time, until they finally went extinct, and none ever appeared. What are the benefits that starlight magical beasts can bring? Long Houchen asked with curiosity. The ninth holy god replied heavily, I can give you a simple example so that you understand. In the past, when Master built the Tower of Eternity, he used in its core 3 magical nucleus of starlight divine beasts. And up till now, the Tower of Eternity is still as glorious. This is precisely because of the existence of these 3 nucleus, making the Tower of Eternity a supra-divine tool. A supra-divine tool. Long Houchen heard yet another brand new word. The ninth holy god explained, a so-called supra-divine tool is an item like that pillar we just destroyed. However, that pillar seemed to be still not at the rank of supra-divine tool, only at its fledgling stage. But that pillar seems to be just the part of a kind of ultra-divine weapon of even greater terror than a supra-divine tool. We have never seen something like that before, at the very least in the knowledge of our master, it doesn't exist. In this world, we have come to scour some information regarding ultra-divine tools, but in fact, there are not many records about them, even in any ancient books from our world. At the side, Lin Shin couldn't help but ask, then, how can you be certain that this divine god pillar is part of an ultra-divine tool? The ninth holy god replied, from its aura. Although its might is far beyond compare with ordinary weapons, at the time it was destroyed, it let out the aura from an ultra-divine weapon. This kind of terrifying aura is 10-fold more powerful than the Tower of Eternity. Such an existence cannot be explained unless calling it an ultra-divine tool. Long Houchen nodded lightly, as if understanding the perilous situation they were in. Divine tool, supra-divine tool and ultra-divine tool. That was the first time he was hearing of this categorization for divine tools. But no matter what, there was no doubt about their existence. Wasn't the Tower of Eternity a supra-divine tool that never missed to put them in or with its mysteries? And it was even more probable for the 72 demon god pillars to be part of an ultra-divine tool. So it was no wonder that over the past 6,000 years, no human was able to destroy one. But since things were so, how is it that Hao Yue was able to? For a moment, Long Houchen's mind seemed to be thrown in disorder. It was as if he came to a guess, but without anything to confirm or prove his thoughts. Moreover, his hypothesis wasn't complete either, and still full of gaps. The ninth holy god continued, starlight divine beast were for some time also existences of same grade. And among the divine tools that are inherited from ancient times, at least 9 out of 10 among the ones that have light attribute are related to starlight divine beasts. The overwhelming majority of the starlight divine beasts have great battle capabilities, so killing them to gain benefits from their resources is bound to require a huge cost. And among all the starlight divine beasts types, the hardest one to deal with is of an extraordinary kind. Because it doesn't have any offensive strength of itself, it cannot wound any of its enemies, and would simply flee upon exhaustion of the enemy. The starlight divine snail before our eyes is this kind of starlight divine beast, a formidable magical beast close to unparalleled in defense. And because it cannot attack, among starlight divine beasts, it is known as a peaceful one. Han Yu raised the question, it cannot attack. Then couldn't we capture it, and then think of a way to handle it? It should sooner or later show a gap. The ninth holy god shook his head, replying, the defense of a snail of sun and moon is the reason why it is praised as an everlasting remnant. Not only blocking the overwhelming majority of the attacks, it can also negate any negative effects. In the history of the ancient times, a snail of sun and moon is said to have appeared 3 times, but there was only one time it was slain. That time, it encountered a supra-divine tool specializing in attack, and wasn't able to use its peak defense from the beginning of the battle, since attacked by surprise. And that was the only time a snail of sun and moon died. And after eating the meat of that divine snail of sun and moon, that Almighty One ruled over the world for 1,000 years. That was a dragon kin, who became a gigantic divine dragon upon eating the divine snail of sun and moon. But do you know how his rule eventually ended? Among starlight divine beasts, divine snails of sun and moon have a very special status. Close to 1,000 years after the gigantic divine dragon first appeared, a divine snail of sun and moon appeared. And at the same time appeared a human, just like Master and you. With the divine snail of sun of moon acting as his shield, he finally killed that gigantic divine dragon, and starting from that point, humans finally started to reveal their brilliance, starting the process of unifying the whole continent. A human like me. Long Houchen's eyes flashed with light. Are you saying that it was a God's chosen one? The 9th Holy Guard lightly shook his head. In the ancient times, there wasn't the appellation of a God's chosen one. Humans were like magical beasts. It was only after ruling over the world that they started getting praised as an existence of higher grade. If this was the ancient times, you would be called a starlight divine beast. Not only Long Houchen, but the members of the whole squad cried out in surprise. The 9th Holy Guard stating that starlight divine beasts were God's chosen ones of the goddess of light was something no one expected. It was no wonder that Long Houchen had such an amiable feeling upon entering. And after coming here, they all started to have the feeling that the aura spreading out from that divine snail of sun of light seemed similar to Long Houchen's. The level of purity of their spiritual energies didn't differ by much, and in some sense, they were similar existences, only belonging to different races. Lin Shin murmured, then, if I eat a piece of your meat, would I evolve? The 9th Holy Guard instantly became ice cold. Want to harm Master? Just die. Lin Shin hastened to clarify with a smile. I'm just asking out of curiosity, nothing more. The 9th Holy Guard shook his head. It's only by eating Master's whole body that you would be able to inherit the blood of the starlight divine beast. Caia suddenly remarked, let's rather call them God's chosen ones. Really, the term beast sounds so unpleasant to hear. At the time, the 9th Holy Guard, who wasn't affected by any of the others, looked at Caia. Fear started to appear in his expression, as he gave a nod while looking down. Meanwhile, Long Houchen seemed to have put his thoughts in order. So to sum up everything you just said, there had been in the past a gigantic dragon with a supra-divine tool in his possession, who managed to eat up a divine snail of sun and moon after killing it, thus becoming the sacred gigantic dragon that ruled over the continent for over 1,000 years. Then, it ended up being killed by a chosen one of the goddess of light like me, which established the foundation for the unification of the continent by the humans. Right? Then what about the third, a divine snail of sun and moon? The 9th Holy Guard replied, when the third time one appeared, the continent was already under human rule. The divine snail of sun and moon having found out about the surprise attack against it, no one managed to pierce its defense until it escaped. The one we are seeing today is very possibly the same one as back then. Since I never heard of the appearance of another kind of peaceful divine beast appearing. Wan Yuan murmured, sounds like the times divine snails of sun and moon appeared announced a transitional period before a change of rule in the continent. But the only exception was the third time. Now, the timing of appearance of this divine snail of sun and moon happens to coincide with our destruction of a demon god pillar. Doesn't it signify that the demons are going to perish under our hand? Although Wang Yuan only said that, everyone had a feeling of excitement when hearing her. At least, this was a good omen. And furthermore, the 9th Holy Guard didn't seem to contradict this conclusion. The third time a divine snail of sun and moon appeared preceded the start of the war between the humans and Master. For a moment, everyone went silent, and Long Houchen immediately reacted at the 9th Holy Guard's words. Are you saying that the holy necromancer, who set up the Tower of Eternity, slumbering calamity Elux, was one of the leaders of the necromancers who opposed humans in that calamitous war. The soul of Powerhouse pulsing in the eyes of the Ninth Holy Guard suddenly became burning hot, giving a serious reply. He was indeed their leader. From these simple words, everyone was shocked. Didn't that mean that Elux was precisely the main culprit of the calamity that befell upon humanity, the chief of all necromancers, that ruled over their group? Then, it was no wonder that the Tower of Eternity would be that formidable, so things were like that. Long Houchen's lips were pursed tightly, and the blood in his cheeks became clearly visible, clearly showing his unstable state of mind. Everyone was able to understand his current mood. Despite being a knight, he had been leading his comrades to gain the graces of a sinner against humanity, one who brought the previous human catastrophe, nearly causing the extinction of humanity. And it was precisely because of that catastrophe that humans suffered a large blow, after which followed the dark era that lasted for 6,000 years. How was it something Long Houchen could bear so easily? The silence lasted for a long time, before Long Houchen gazed at the others. We cannot change what already happened. But in the future, we cannot keep going the same way. I have come to the decision that in the future, we won't go to the third floor of the Tower of Eternity and further. Sorry, everyone. Saying that, he bowed down before the others. These words carried two meanings. First, he wanted to give his apologies and take responsibility, having gained the graces of this necromancer, and then, because of the decision he came, to stop bringing the group to train in the Tower of Eternity. The other 6 from their demon hunt squad instantly broke away, none of them able to bear Long Houchen's bow. Han Yu supported Long Houchen. Boss, don't be like that. The fault doesn't lie with you, we knew nothing of that in the past. Moreover, everything you did was done with the team in mind. You aren't in the wrong. We will support your decision with our all. And you know, we haven't done anything that would benefit the necromancers, only gaining some favors. In the other hand, we have already gotten rid of one demon god pillar. From everything we have done, we can have a clear conscience. So much, that we can claim ourselves to be worthy of standing on the same ground as our compatriots. Han Yu's words were categorical, as he tightly gripped Long Houchen's arm. If Long Houchen could be treated as a sinner for humanity, then who in this world could be called worthy? Taking a deep breath, Long Houchen gave an earnest look to his comrades. His tense face gradually eased up, and after letting a sigh, he declared, "We are going, Master." That divine snail of sun and moon, the Ninth Holy Guard reacted with eagerness. No matter in which era, a divine snail of sun and moon was an absolute treasure. But seeing his expression, Long Houchen actually looked willing to let go of it. Long Houchen replied calmly, "The Forest Boa King is already dead, so it doesn't have any more enemies. Maybe living in this land of death is the safest place for it. According to your words, it is, like me, a starlight divine beast. How could I harm it? All I can do is to hope that it will give humans its blessings in defeating demonkind, so that the continent recovers its shine." The matter of the Tower of Eternity had been a fatal blow to them, but more importantly, after knowing about the antecedents of this divine snail of sun and moon, his already non-existent desire to get it was reaffirmed. Not wanting to get into trouble on account for possessing a treasure, Long Houchen came to the conclusion that he did not have the ability to protect this divine snail of sun and moon. Although his cultivation wasn't low anymore, compared to true powerhouses, he was still lacking very much. As for eating this divine snail of sun and moon after killing it, that was something he didn't even give the slightest thought to. First of all, Long Houchen wouldn't harm a magical beast that is no threat to him in any way, but even if he had the intention to harm this one, he wouldn't possibly be able to put himself through that act. Without a doubt, the Forest Boa King racked his brain quite a lot after discovering the divine snail of sun and moon laying here, but didn't gain his desired recompense. Otherwise, he would be rather closer to the bearing of a dragon king. Seeing Long Houchen go away, his comrades followed with no hesitation. The current Long Houchen was actually at his weakest state of mind. Now was the time that he needed the help of his comrades the most. Even the greatest Scrooge that Lin Shin was, didn't give a single glance to the divine snail of sun and moon. The Ninth Holy Guard was standing at the back. At the time he turned his head back, giving a look to the enormous divine snail of sun and moon before glancing at Long Houchen. The soul fire in his eyes started to pound suddenly. Who could be indifferent upon seeing an existence, such as a divine snail of sun and moon here, voluntarily letting it go? Even his past master Elux would never have been able to do that. Thinking back about Elux, the body of the ninth holy guard started to shake, as if remembering some terrifying experience. Then, he lowered his head in sadness and followed the others outside. Actually, in this world, there is no real correct thing to do, and no absolute mistake. Even during those days, the calamity of the necromancers was just a big shame. The ones who restored humanity finally ended up framed as their greatest enemies, exterminated by their hands. Who wouldn't be sighing when hearing this? An unclouded voice suddenly resounded in the midst of the vines, making Long Houchen almost react instantly, taking out his two swords. The divine snail of sun and moon that came out of its shell at some point had a pair of pitch-black eyes, gazing at him. His look was very gentle, and a pair of soft horns appeared above his head. Long Houchen was in shock. Were you the one who spoke? The divine snail of sun and moon nodded at Long Houchen, as if it was a human. Right, it was me. Long Houchen turned his head back, and his comrades reflexively stood in guard around him. What a surprise was it to see the divine snail of sun and moon speak in human language. Long Houchen directed an ardent look at the divine snail of sun and moon. I don't understand your words. The divine snail of sun and moon gave an enthusiastic reply. One's innate talent isn't something everlasting. Everything one gets after birth is bound to affect it somehow. The same goes for the chosen signs of light. They can also get affected by the vices of the external world. Even the purest heart in the world can get infected. The God of Light is the protector of the world. And I, divine snail of sun and moon, and my kin hope to restore peace in this world. It's just that until this day, we have yet to really succeeded. At this point, the divine snail of sun and moon clearly became more emotional. Long Houchen listened to him calmly, but for some reason, he unconsciously got the feeling that the words of the divine snail of sun and moon were extremely important for him to listen. The mission of us, divine snail of sun and light, is really majestic, but at the same time, our fate is tragic. The time the first divine snail of sun and moon appeared, at the same time came a sign of light, another starlight beast of that time, so-called God's chosen one by you humans. That was the gigantic divine dragon. The story of that little skeleton was quite one-sided. The reality was really more painful. The exalted God of Light picked the dragon race, because of the great power of dragons, and their ability of self-protection, thus making them incomparably powerful with bestowment of the physique as God's chosen one. However, our God overlooked the greediness of the dragons. Perhaps dragons don't necessarily have a tyrannical character, but their natural desire for beautiful thing is incredibly strong. As a result, my ancestor became the first target of tragedy, having been attacked by surprise after that gigantic holy dragon gained his trust, only to become food. That way, that gigantic holy dragon awakened and became a formidable gigantic divine dragon, ruling over the world for over 1,000 years. However, he had a defect in his heart. As his rule was coming to its end due to his greediness, the God of Light became incomparably grieved towards his actions. As living beings kept reproducing in the continent, the humans gradually revealed their brilliance. Perhaps the humans' inner heart could be even darker than the other races, but humans had a creativity that all the other races didn't have. For this reason, our God finally chose a human to become his spokesperson. That was the second sign of light, that we were born to protect. My ancestor from this time was fortunate, or at least during his early period. Accompanying that sign of light in assiduous training, he saw him become an outstanding talent, that led the human armies and defeated that gigantic divine dragon, relying on his understanding of the enemy, and finally became an heroic dragon slayer by killing him. At the same time, this announced the start of the human rule over the continent, known as Glorious Era of the Continent. Then, wasn't that a perfect situation? Long Houchen couldn't help but blurt out. The tone divine snail of sun and light started to sound suddenly furious. Perfect. It was only perfect for humans. In his youth, he was indeed a perfect person. But upon getting older, at the time he started to reach the end of his life, do you know what he did? Looking helpless, Long Houchen shook his head. The divine snail of sun and moon coldly said, from who knows where, he heard a rumor that eating a starlight beast could grant immortality. Hearing those words, Long Houchen felt a chill on his back. Immediately, he started to grasp his hands fiercely. The others were also overwhelmed with shock. Although the divine snail of sun and moon didn't say it explicitly, they clearly understood the following course of events from his words. Then he betrayed his best friend, the best friend who sacrificed everything for him, all for the sake of an illusion, the possibility of immortality. From this came out the real nature of your human race. My second ancestor finally ended up unable to escape the same fate as that first ancestor, but his pain was even greater. That was because he was reduced to the state of food in the hands of his most trusted and beloved person. Then, the time I descended onto this world, as the third one of my kind, I had the memories of my both ancestors engraved in me. For this reason, I hated all of you, humans, bitterly. I didn't want, no matter what, to choose to support the human side. I had to find an even better race in this world, to unify it under a better rule. However, I have no choice but to admit that the human creativity made the continent very beautiful. If a new ruler were to be born, it would very possibly bring about a great calamity. How could I bring myself to bring that kind of outcome? I was really at a loss, and started to lose sight of the reason for my birth. If this world was so peaceful, there should be no reason for a divine snail of sun and moon to be here. But afterwards, I finally understood. The reason for my birth was very simple. After reproducing for several thousand years, even if you, humans, were powerful, beautiful, and your society, science and technology advanced remarkably, the bad human nature gradually came out, and all their dark and filthy sides started coming to the surface. Not long after that, I ran into my supposed target of support, the sign of light of that era. But to my anger, that sign of light was still a human. Why did it have to be another human? Could it be that our God could only acknowledge this kind of race rooted in evil? But I had no choice, as I had my own mission. And then I finally understood the reason why my ancestor was so dead set on that sign of light. A human sign of light is an almost flawless existence. His kindness, courage, wiseness and power, almost his whole being could be seen as something perfect. I unawarely ended up attracted by him, but right as I was about to express my desire to support him with my all, something happened. He seems to have had a very intense experience, and completely changed, becoming mad, incomparably mad. Then he ran, splitting ways with me. At that time, I was perplexed and didn't understand what he experienced. Even now, I still don't know. But at the time he returned, 20 years later, he had become a terrifying existence. Something even a god would fear. That was the one you were speaking about, the holy necromancer, slumbering calamity Elux. At this point, Long Houchen couldn't help but let out a gasp, unconsciously looking at the ninth holy guard. At this moment, the ninth holy guard became extremely stirred. Little skeleton, if you know the reason why Elux became that way at that time, could you tell me? That would clear up the doubt that had remained in my heart all this time. The divine snail of sun and moon asked the ninth holy guard. The ninth holy guard appeared at a loss, before shaking his head. I don't know either. At the time I encountered Master, he was already known as the slumbering calamity Elux, the most powerful necromancer of all time. So you were really the divine snail of sun and moon of that time. I still remember that you had a conversation with Master, but disappeared after that. Could it be that Master didn't tell you back then? The divine snail of sun and moon lightly shook his head. That's right. After his return, I discussed once with him, hoping to understand and to persuade him. But the Elux from that time had already changed completely, becoming totally hysterical and unreasonable. He seemed only preoccupied with strength, but I could see that his soul was contaminated by something, deceiving and filling him with wrath. I don't know why he did that, but I can be certain that something happened to his body. As the spokesman of order and peace that I am, he invited me to accompany him in changing the world, cleaning all the human filth. But how could I commit such disastrous acts with him? In the end, none of us managed to convince him, and all I could do was to leave forever, in order to avoid encountering the same ending as my ancestors. Since then, I haven't met him ever again. At this point, the divine snail of sun and moon stared at Long Houchen's face with a firm look. For this reason, the sign of light you are, shouldn't come to a hasty verdict. It's true that Elux was the origin of the terrible catastrophe that fell upon humans, but I am certain that some extreme pain was filling his heart, causing even his nature to change in such way. In reality, the kindness that is so symbolic of signs of light still remained in the depths of his heart. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let me go, and wouldn't have harmed a single civilian in the terrible war that followed later. All he did was to defeat the human armies and slaughter many of the nobles. I hope to understand him, to understand the story behind his acts. I don't know what happened to Elux, but I dare say that it must have been a very significant event, in the blink of an eye, so many years passed already. Everything that was here before disappeared, and Elux isn't here anymore. I know about the descent of the demons as well. Perhaps, it could be to punish you humans for your greediness and evil nature that they appeared. I also sensed your appearance. The sign of light is pure, but the purer an existence is, the more it is intolerant to little imperfections. If there was a quality I could hope to give you, that would be tolerance. No matter when, and no matter what experience you will encounter, if you can remain magnanimous and tolerant in all circumstances, perhaps will you see the world differently. Hearing the words of the snail of sun and moon, Long Houchen nodded earnestly, engraving all the words of this ancestor that lived in fear for close to 10,000 years in his mind. He couldn't deny the evil nature of humans, and this was the first time he heard these stories about the former signs of light. The words of the snail rang a loud alarm bell in his heart. Thank you for your warning, Senior. In my current state, I have no way to protect you, but I will engrave inside of me everything you told me. I will maybe come to look for you in the future, and I hope that at that time, I will be able to stand in front of you with a clear conscience. Long Houchen's words were earnest, and the comrades by his side seemed to be all staring at him. Everyone had accepted to obey him willingly, and could attest that at least since they met up, Long Houchen could absolutely have a clear conscience regarding everything he did. However, the divine snail of sun and moon shook its head to these words, letting out a sigh. Unfortunately, I cannot see you. Can you guess what I realized over these past thousands years regarding my kin? I finally understood what my two ancestors did wrong. But in this life, even if I attempt a new try, I won't commit the same mistake. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.